First You Think is a not-for-profit ministry of the First Unitarian Church of Des Moines. Support us at ucdsm.org today.
The Jewish organization HIAS, which seeks a world in which refugees find welcome, safety, and opportunity, tells us the Tripitaka highlights the importance of cultivating 4 states of mind: metta, loving kindness; muditha, sympathetic joy; upekkha, equanimity; and karuna, compassion. There are many different traditions of Buddhism, but the concept of karuna is a fundamental tenet in all of them. It embodies the qualities of tolerance, non-discrimination, inclusion, and empathy for the suffering of others, mirroring the central role which compassion plays in other religions. The Torah makes 36 references to honoring the stranger. The book of Leviticus contains one of the most prominent tenets of the Jewish faith. The stranger who resides with you shall be to you as one of your citizens. You shall love him as yourself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Further, the Torah provides that you shall not oppress the stranger, for you know the soul of the stranger, having yourselves been strangers in the land of Egypt. In Matthew's gospel, we hear the call, I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. And in the letter to the Hebrews, we read, let mutual love continue. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing that, some have entertained angels without knowing it. When the prophet Muhammad fled persecution in Mecca, he sought refuge in Medina, where he was hospitably welcomed. The prophet's hijrah, or migration, symbolizes the movement from lands of oppression, and his hospitable treatment embodies the Islamic model of refugee protection. The Holy Quran calls for the protection of the asylum seeker, or al-Mustamin, whether Muslim or non-Muslim, whose safety is irrevocably guaranteed under the institution of Aman, the provision of security and protection. As noted in the Surat al-Anfal, those who give asylum and aid are in very truth the believers. For them is the forgiveness of sins and a provision most generous. And now, Connie Ryan, Executive Director of Interfaith Alliance of Iowa, will expand on these ideas of caring for strangers.
Good morning. Thank you so much to Elizabeth for inviting me to join you this morning, and always for the warm welcome that I feel when I am with you. Many of you know a lot about Interfaith Alliance of Iowa, but perhaps there are a few here who do not. We will celebrate our 30th anniversary next year, and although we began locally in Des Moines, we have been a statewide organization for the past 29 years. We are nonpartisan and issue-focused. At our core, we protect religious freedom while ensuring religious freedom and religion are not misused to harm and discriminate. We work to defend democracy and safeguard people's rights. We challenge voices of religious extremism. We do all of our work through education and advocacy and ensuring there is a strong, progressive voice in the public square. And we are committed to doing the work in civility. That last part has been hard the last few years. First Unitarian Church is a partner in the work that we do, and many of you support the work that we offer to our communities. Your church supports our work as well, and we are grateful for all of that. The story of the Good Samaritan is arguably the best known of the parables in the Christian text. You most likely know the story, but I'm going to give you the Reader's Digest version just in case. A lawyer is being smug with Jesus and is quizzing him. He asked Jesus a few questions, ending with the question, "Who is my neighbor?" Jesus answers by telling a parable, as was often his custom. A parable is a story with a moral lesson. The man gets beat up and left for dead along a road. A priest walks past him. Another dude, the Levite, walks past him. The Samaritan, and the Samaritans were detested and looked down upon in that area at that time. The Samaritan stops, helps the man, takes him to an inn, and cares for him. Jesus then asked the lawyer, of the three, who was the neighbor? On the simplest of levels, the Good Samaritan story teaches us to be kind to others, a valuable and important lesson, but there is also more to the story. When I was 10 years old, my family moved to Des Moines for my dad to become one of the ministers at a church here in Des Moines. That first summer was a little tough because all the kids in the neighborhood had grown up together. Some of the girls welcomed me and included me as their neighbor. They invited me over to their houses. We played in the backyards. We became friends over that summer. One of the girls was not so excited to have me in her territory. She often found ways to exclude me as the outsider, rather than welcome me as a new friend, as a neighbor. We never became friends in the 8 years we lived on the same street together before we went off to college. There was a reunion a couple of years ago with most of the women who grew up on that street. I tried to be friendly with her, and she mostly ignored me. I don't tell you that story to have you feel sorry for me or to take my side, although you definitely should take my side. I tell the story because people are complicated. Intellectually, I know that her excluding me had little to do with me, but was about power and her own insecurities. But tell that to my childhood heart. Power is a funny thing. Those who have and those who have not, those who want and those who say they could care less until they do. Senator Cory Booker once said, "The power of the people is always more powerful than the people in power." It's a nice sentiment, but I wonder if it's true. When the people in power have unrestrained, almighty power, can the people ever be more powerful? Can we claw back power? I suppose it depends on how close we are to the edge. We see power saluted and wielded in many areas of life these days, within families, in sports, in big business, even in nonprofit advocacy sectors, certainly in politics, and yes, even in the world of religion, arguably the sector over history with the most consequential fights for power. Couple religion with politics, and most tragic alignment of power can happen. Which brings me to Christian nationalism. It's funny, I get a lot of pushback on that name, mostly from Christians, because they are offended by the term. Folks want me to rename it something other than Christian nationalism, and I tell them that it's above my pay grade to do that. I get it, I do. But here's the good news in a storm of bad news these days. Christian nationalism is not Christianity. It's not. It has nothing to do with the teachings of Jesus and God's love, which is the core of that religion. Christian nationalism is one form of nationalism. There are others. Christian nationalism is an ideology, not a religion. Christian nationalism claims that the United States, our democracy, is a Christian nation. It is not. Christian nationalism is about power, not about the common good. Christian nationalism is about promoting bigotry and hate against an array of people rather than love of neighbor, actively othering people who do not align with or look like those who perpetuate that bigotry and hate. Christian nationalism leans on conspiracy theories, lies, and violence, rather than safeguarding and amplifying truth, community, and peace for all people. Christian nationalism is on the rise, and its growing chokehold on our democracy is alarming. Now, to be clear, the church has a long history of targeting various groups of people and misusing the sacred text and the institution of the church as a means of separating the haves and have-nots, establishing barriers, justifying bigotry and discrimination. There are plenty of reasons to mistrust the church. But there is also hope. Denominational movements are on the rise to atone for the sins of the past and to more urgently support and work alongside marginalized groups, establishing new patterns of power based in love and dignity and respect, not exclusion and hate. There's much work to be done with much promise ahead. As I said earlier, a hallmark of Christian nationalism is the idea that our democracy is a Christian nation, their one true faith and their civic life melded into one. Today's Christian nationalist agenda includes a long list: inserting ultra-conservative Christian beliefs into public schools and into our government and public life, targeting religious minority groups, which really does cause a rise in hate crimes, abolishing LGBTQ rights, targeting and terrorizing immigrants, whitewashing our history of systemic oppression and racism, banning abortion and in vitro fertilization, diverting public dollars to religious institutions, censoring or banning books, entertainment, and art, and the list goes on. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? With our nation's founding, the vision was to form a more perfect union. It's certainly not perfect. Never has been, never likely will be, but the ideals and the promise of our nation are something to aspire to and should uplift the hopes and dreams of every person. The agenda of Christian nationalism does not believe in those possibilities and certainly not opportunities for all people. If asked, who is my neighbor? Those following the Christian nationalist agenda would answer, it depends. It depends on the neighbor's nationality. It depends on the neighbor's race. It depends on their immigration status. It depends on their sexual orientation and gender identity. It depends on their religion. It depends. And who is my neighbor? I don't think the answer, it depends, is what our more perfect union is supposed to be. Who is my neighbor? Your neighbor looks like you and also those who do not. Your neighbor shares the same life experiences as you and also those who grew up quite differently. Your neighbor is the family who lives next door and those you'll never meet. Your neighbor shares your values and also those who do not. That last one is hardest for me. How do I love my neighbor who is racist and xenophobic? How do I love my neighbor who is homophobic and transphobic and misogynistic? How do I love my neighbor who is anti-Semitic and Islamophobic? How do I love my neighbor who perpetuates myths and lies about others, elevates hate and bigotry, incites violence? I struggle with this as much as anyone. I think about some of the elected officials and leaders of religious right groups who perpetuate and spew hate. How can I love them? How can I ever bring myself to that? Yet do I really get to pick and choose? Doesn't love your neighbor mean love your neighbor? We can all learn from the teachings of many religious traditions, such as the Good Samaritan story and those that Elizabeth read earlier, to care about all people. You know the Unitarian or Universalist principles affirm and promote, and we heard some of them earlier, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another, and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, just to name a few. The principles draw from our many resources, such as wisdom from the world's religions which inspire us in our ethical and spiritual life, Jewish and Christian teachings which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. Perhaps loving our neighbor simply means caring for every person as a human being. Interreligious relations leader and author Joel Lohr wrote about the subject. He says, although the ideas of love and neighbor seem self-evident, they are also more complex than we often realize. We are not always as good as we may think we are in loving rightly and without exception, even those of us who believe in our bumper stickers and the signs in our yards. In short, his message was, love thy neighbor is hard work and at times complicated, but is fundamentally important. Loving our neighbors, all our neighbors, it is hard work and certainly not for the faint of heart. We will get it wrong, undoubtedly time and again, but we must also work to get it right, even when we don't want to do the work. Love your neighbor across the street and around the world. Love your neighbor who is straight and who is queer and who doesn't understand why respecting pronouns is important. Love your neighbor who is white and black and brown. Love your neighbor who is Christian and Jewish and atheist and Pentecostal. Love your neighbor whose ancestors fought to win our independence and who have newly arrived to experience the freedoms of a great nation. Love your neighbors regardless of what they do and what they don't do. So what do we do about Christian nationalism in that context? Love your neighbor doesn't mean we just accept the hate and harm in the world. Loving your neighbor is the reason we must find ways to challenge the hate and work tirelessly to heal this nation, especially disempowering those who amplify the words and actions of Christian nationalism. What do we do about Christian nationalism? My challenge to you is to get in good trouble. It's not a phrase that is unexpected. Many of us know it. I wrote in our weekly e-newsletter this week, civil rights leader and Congressperson John Lewis was the driver behind that challenge. He lived a life strongly committed to get in good trouble, necessary trouble. He also inspired each of us to do likewise. The struggles we face today call for all of us who believe in the common good to get in good trouble. Get in good trouble for the rights of your neighbor and yourself. Get in good trouble to ensure religion and religious freedom are not misused to harm. Get in good trouble to protect our democracy, not allowing it to become an authoritarian theocracy. There are many ways to get in good trouble. You know many of them. Nonviolent, but certainly causing a ruckus. So where do we start in pushing back on Christian nationalism? Number one, learn more. Learn more as an individual, learn more in your community. I would point to the Interfaith Alliance of Iowa website for a resource guide that can help you with that. Talk with friends and family. Make a commitment to talk with friends and family, always listening to understand, but always being brave to make sure that you are open and honest and sharing with them your concerns about Christian nationalism. Work together, don't reinvent the wheel. Join us in doing this work in a number of other organizations. Collaboration makes all of us stronger. Speak out. We can never cede our voice or our power individually or as congregations. We need you to speak out. Hold those who promote Christian nationalism and perpetuate hate and bigotry accountable. It will take all of us. It will take all of us every time. Love your neighbor no equivocation. No reservations, no passports or documents, no religious test, no identity or demographic qualifications. Love your neighbor because of their humanity. Without reservation, but most definitely with expectation. Love your neighbor, and also without reservation, get in good trouble every day. May it be so.